The mic wasn't on. Okay, but right. Okay, so everyone can hear me online too. Brilliant. Let's go back to let's go back to the slides. All right. So thanks everyone for turning up for Svelte Society London for the May edition. We are in Microsoft Reactor in London. So thanks to the hosts for hosting us again. We're partnering with Expertise Recruitment as well. So we've got Callum just over here. If you want to be talking to anyone about your next move. Yeah, as I said, Microsoft Reactor. Before we get started though, we need to do some basic housekeeping for our hosts here. There's a code of conduct, both for Svelte Society, which is over on the GitHub. Everyone should have read that. So, hi. So, for everyone watching, I can't use StreamYard, so apologies. Um, all of the stuff we just spoke about was just housekeeping for the building here, so you haven't missed anything. So we're going to get our first speaker up, which is Jang Singh, and he's going to be talking about. Building a fully functional SaaS app using ZenStack and SvelteKit. So if you just bear with us while we get him set up, and he'll be ready to talk. So just bear with, and apologies for the screen section here. I'm just going to take myself out, and then we're going to pop him in. in the settings here.
Screen?
Yeah, yes, share your screen.
Okay.
Entire screen, I'd say.
Okay.
You need to click it.
Oh, sorry.
Cool. So you can, I'll add that in, but in your settings here, just to make sure everyone can hear you online.
Okay, where is the mouse? Whoa.
Where's your mouse?
Oh, no, it's here. Ooh, come on.
Why is it not moving? You got it?
It's just, I don't know. Let's try to reconnect.
Yeah.
Maybe window. Let's try this.
Right.
Okay. Is everything working?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Okay. Right.
It's working?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's get started. By the way, before start, I would like to ask a question. How many do you guys know about Prisma? Raise your hand. Oh, that's many. Oh, that's good. Yeah, because the stack I'm building is just on top of Prisma. That will make things easier. Yeah. So I'm gonna start.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah. By the way, I'm Jia Sheng. Yeah, and you can find me in the Twitter. It's Jia Sheng Go, just there. Yeah. And today I'm just give a short demo about how to use Swallkit and the stack to build a SaaS. It's actually a SaaS to do. Yeah. To do is always the simplest one. Everyone. Yeah. Yeah, a little introduction. By the way, it's not an introduction for this place. I'm just happened to work in Microsoft for my first job. Yeah, for 5 years. I'm working on DSL. It's a language trying to describe the protocol and trying to generate the document, the test suite code, and also the parser for that. Yeah, and after that, I joined a startup company called PT-Man. It's mainly build the marketing related tools, the SaaS, really for the data analytics, something like that. Yeah, and then after the PT-Man, here I am building this stack toolkit. Yeah, that's all my career actually here. Yeah, and yeah, actually I'm very inspired by the book that Simon Sinek wrote. It's name about start with why. So instead of introduce the Zen stack, I'm just want to talk a little about why we build this Zen stack. Yeah, actually, yeah, the reason is that we encourage people to act on a whim, to build something meaningful by utilizing their unique skills and passions. And you can see from my career, first in the very big company, Microsoft, and then joined the startup. I think if people ask me, the major difference I felt in the startup is the entrepreneurship. Yeah, actually, in that place, instead you're building something for some other people's vision, you actually build things for yourself. So it's really hard to describe the excitement and the fulfillment you get from building your own stuff. So I'm really encourage everyone should have the chance to do the entrepreneurship. It doesn't have to be to build a company, to raise in the funds, or even to be profit. Just to build something that you have totally control or you have significant impact on. And the passion and enthusiasm you got, you will never forget about that. I think that's the reason why we want to build the stack. Because although we cannot guarantee your success, considering how rarely the startup going to be success, but at least we are trying to strive to relieve the pain for you. Yeah, that's the why part. Yeah, and here I think it all comes to because in the startup company Pdemand, we managed to build like four SaaS product and 2 from scratch. And during that time, I think a lot of things I just see it's just repeat again and again. For every time you build a product, you need to do a lot of things. So I'm thinking, okay, some things seem to be abstract, to be solved by the tool rather than to rebuild it every time. So let's come to how the steps you need to do to build an application, probably a web application in our scope. So yeah, this is a very simplified version. At least I think you need these 4 steps. The first, definitely you need to have defined your database schema. And the second one, you need to define the API. It could be RESTful, it could be the GraphQL, or even could be the TRPC. Anything you want, you choose. And the third thing is just you have to implementation of the API. And mostly it's just the CRUD operations, if you can think. Yeah. And the last one is to, after the 3 steps are ready, you can now write your UI components, you build the form, you talk to the backend, and probably that's all the steps we need to do now. Yeah, but if you think about it, I think ideally, maybe we could just do the 2 steps. I think currently for the modern framework like the Svelte Kit and the Next.js, they already do a lot of jobs because the user in the Svelte Kit, you have the load action function, and in the Next.js, you have get server props. Usually, you don't need to define the API. It's already there. But yeah, still for a lot of other cases, you still need to have your API, especially for some common functionality. It doesn't belong to the specific page or specific component. So for that case, you still need to have the API defined. And so I'm thinking we are just going to push it further to remove, at least for the CRUD operations for these APIs. So here comes the stack. And yeah, I think most of our guys, you already know about the Prisma. So that would make things easier. So that's the schema part. I think only the line rectangle part is what we added. Before that, it's just the sample from the Prisma website. It's a class take post model. You define the model. And here, what we added is the X control layer. The reason we're trying to add that is because now we would like to define the API, define the schema, then you can just write your front-end code. So without access control layer, you just expose your database to the front-end. So that's definitely not the way to go. It's unsafe, and the front-end will carry whatever data it wants. That doesn't make sense. So that's why the first thing we need to add is this access policy. So with a policy, even you call the API, it's a guarded API. You just get what you needed, and you can only get what you needed. So that's why we build the access control. And then with those guarded API, we could just generate the API for you, whether it's a RESTful API or it's a TRPC, and even the GraphQL, we will generate for you. You don't need to worry that. And then, of course, we have the end-to-end type safety. And actually, we just, the Prisma and also like the TRPC, they already did a great job for that. We just stick to that to make sure you still get the end-to-end type safety. Yeah, and this meeting, this conference is about Svelte. So I'm thinking, okay, seems like we have a lot of common grounds with the Svelte. So this is 3 big benefits in the Svelte website front page. The first is write-less code and no virtual DOM, and the third one is truly reactive. So I'm thinking, well, sounds like we have a lot of similar things. From the stack, we do the API generation. So of course, you also write less code. And for second thing, because we have access policy, you don't need to have to do the role-based access control or use the RLS. It's the role level security that's provided by the database, like the Postgre. So we just do that for you in the schema, so you don't need to worry about these things. And the last one is the truly declarative, because everything is just declared in the schema as you've seen before. So I'm thinking actually underlayer, I think the reason why we have those common grounds is because we shared one similar strategy to support this one. That's why it's like compiler to do his job. So we will focus what really matters. The matter thing is your business logic and the user experience. That's a thing we should do. But for other things, we should let the computer do those things. Yeah. And for the abstract level, I think from the mission point, we still also have very similar things. I think one mission is for the experienced developers, and they will continue enjoying their knowledge and skills, but they will be able to move a lot faster, either as a solo entrepreneur or with a very small team. Yeah, and for the people new to software development, I think it serves as an easy ladder that reduces the frustration, keeps things safe, and help people stay oriented in the vast amount of knowledge and choices in the software industry. I feel the mission is quite similar with what Svelte is trying to do. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, let's go to the code part. Okay. Is screen okay? Okay.
So are you sharing?
So I need to. Oh, I guess I remember as probably. Tear screen. Is it okay now? Yeah. Okay. Well. Oh, sorry.
Command plus.
Okay. Wow.
We can only see 3 lines at a time.
Okay. Okay. Oh, seems the mouse doesn't work. Doesn't matter. Okay, so this is a schema, as you say, it's similar to the Prisma because a lot of things they are the same. So for sorry, I should demo the product first. Oh.
Don't worry, it's fine.
Mouse doesn't work again. Okay, doesn't matter. Let's do this. Oh, shit. It's too hard. I'm probably still trying to share the window. Sorry. Oh. Can't stop sharing. Oh, okay. Let's try to share the window instead of the screen. I think probably this one. Okay, works.
Oh, sorry, I'll share that. Sorry. There you go.
Okay. This is a product I'm trying to demo. It's a SaaS to do. You see, the first thing for the SaaS is you need to do the tenant isolation. I mean, yeah, this is each for the tenant or space. It becomes one space for company or a small organization. So here is I already created account. So in my account, there is two space. It's one is for Zenstack. It's one is for Svelte London. So in Zenstack, yeah, we have the to-do list. So the to-do list could be the either public or private. So I already created two. So this one is backlog, is for public, and this one is article. It's a private one. It's just for the article I posted. And here is another account. Can you still see the screen?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, this is another account. It just belongs to the stack because it doesn't get involved in the Svelte London space. So you see in this one, he can see only the public to-do list, and here the all the public thing. Okay, this is all the functionality. So.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Can you share your whole screen? Is it not working? You share your whole screen? You could switch tabs and stuff like that.
Oh, okay, okay, I see. But it belongs to the different.
It's just sharing that one window behind.
Okay. But I'm already done, probably. Yeah. Okay. Let's to see shares the
window in the middle. There you go. And then
yeah, to share this, so I cannot switch the window, probably. Okay.
So that's the code, yeah.
Yeah, that's the code. A little smaller. Yeah, it should be fine. Yeah, as you see, yeah, probably the most important thing is that you need to have the space, the tenant, and there have to be a many-to-many relationship between the space and the user. So you need to have a space user and the middle table for those two entities, and here is the user. So usually, because in my last company, the tenant isolation is a very complicated thing, because either you need to do it by the database, means one tenant, one database, but you need to pay the price to maintain all the databases. That's not a very easy thing, and especially for if you just start your new product. So usually another approach is to just use the code. But usually you need to have some middleware things trying to do the filter, trying to make sure you can only access the data that belongs to in your tenant or in your space. When things become complicated, it's very error prone because the control logic is scattered in your whole code base for some feature here, some feature there. But with Zenstack, I think that would be very easy because all these things is actually controlled in the schema. You can see here is let's say the to-do list, and for all these things, we have the access control. So you can define whether this policy is for all. All means read, create, update, delete, the typical CRUD thing. And so for example, for this read things, okay, you need to be the owner. The auth is actually a special thing we created. You can go to the definition in our Stone library. That means the current login user. So this means if the owner is a field defined in this to-do list, means who this to-do list belongs. So if the owner is with the current user, the logged in user is the same, of course, he can read. This is a little complicated thing, means that you see we have the space field defined in the list. So it's the space member, and this we call the prediction collection filter. It's something, if you are familiar with the Prisma, it's equivalent to the Prisma's relation filter. It has the sum, all, or any. Yeah, it's the same thing. So this one is just the any, means that if the current user is any user in this species member, and in the meantime it's not private, then you should be able to read about it. That's a similar thing. So with all this access policy, and you can see how this is a global hooks, and here is usually if without the stack you just use the Prisma. So if you're using the stack, it's quite simpler. You just change whatever you get the Prisma client with this function we provided, get enhanced Prisma. So it just works as a transparent proxy on top of the Prisma, because in the every query you got before issues to the database, we will add the policy control you defined in the schema. We generate the code for that and add that as part of the query filter in the Prisma. Yeah, that's all you need to do to, if you're using Prisma, you want to switch to the stack, that's probably the only thing you need to do here. And also, you see in this top page in our product, you need to get the to-do list. Here, we just, the filter is just, you need to specify which space you want to use this space slot, because one person code belongs to the multiple spaces, and we already seen in my account. So that's the only thing you need. Other thing, you don't need to specify whether it's a public list or private list, because that thing will be handled by the stack. You don't need to worry about that. Still the same thing for the member. So you probably just write code and all these tenant or access control policy that isn't there. You just write as the normal thing. Yeah, that's all you need to do. And also, here is the to-do things. Yeah, the similar thing in a load function. You see, we just give the list number, then you query all the to-dos for you. Let's see what's next. And here is a component we define. Yeah, and it's trying to add the numbers for in the space. There has to be some. Yeah, still we need to have, in some cases, currently we still need to define the route. Like for this add member, it's a component, but you still need to do the post for this API members, which is implemented here. Oh, sorry, API members. Yeah, this is a definition. Okay, so let's go back to the, oh, I probably need to reshare again, sorry. I should share this one. Okay, this is another user actually. Oh, it's hard to demo. I need to switch back again. Let's try to. Yeah, but the mouse doesn't work.
Oh, is that what the issue was with it before?
Yeah. Let's try. Still. Oh. I need to switch to another window. This one. Oh, okay. Let's try. Ooh.
Yeah, we can say that one on the stream.
Okay, seems okay. So this is a member, as you see in our case, we have the admin and the user. So I already created another user as a Scott. So let's try to add it. Okay, you see there is an internal arrow. If you go back to here, well, that would be a difficult. Okay, you can see this arrow. Yeah, because the space user entity field create. Because in our, let me see. Our code. So only this is blocked by this policy because only the space admin can create, update, delete the user. Because for that user, it's just a normal user privilege. So it doesn't, so it fails for this entity check. Yeah. By the way, I say it's a fully functional. That's not 100% because in all the front end, I did not do the exception catch. For this thing, you definitely need to catch the exception saying, okay, you don't have the privilege, or even just do not show that button to user. It's just to demo how the access policy works. So let's go back to, okay, this is the admin account. You can see still workable. Let's start. Yeah. You see this time it works because it has the admin village. And okay, the last thing I want to see is that, where is my mouse? And close this one. Come on, come on, come on. I probably just. So this backlog actually belongs to the admin account because you see, but still, I can also try to modify it. Sorry. Come on, boy. Yeah, I just uncomplete one and delete one. You can see. Yeah, still the same. Yeah, but probably in some case that doesn't what you want because even it's a public one, I don't want others to modify my to-do list. So if you want to make that change, I will show you how to do that. It's quite easy if you are using the Zen stack because let's see in the to-do. Okay, now it's because you see for the all there are two policies. One is if you are the owner, you can do whatever you want. But also we have this rule, means that if you are the member of the same space, means that in the same tenant, and also if this list is not private, then you can also do everything like you are the owner. So let's just change it. So instead of the all, let's only give it read information for this. So let's need to regenerate. Yeah, this is a command line we provided to regenerate the code from the schema. If you make any schema change, you need to regenerate. Okay, let's restart. Okay, still go back to, this is a user account. Oh, come on. What? Okay, you see it has an arrow. If you go back to the, still the to-do entities failed the update check. Yeah, because we already changed it. They don't have the permission to do so. Yeah, so imagine that for a lot of cases, if you want to change some behavior, you do not need to modify any code. You just change your policy, and then everything will be there. And yeah, the last thing I want to show you guys is that, by the way, under the hood, we still generate the Prisma. Sorry. Yeah, this is a Prisma file we generated from the stack. It's fully competitive because for the everything index, you know. And the reason we do that is because you still need to use it as whatever you use in the Prisma, like the Prisma Studio. It's very cool thing. You can use that one to browse all your data. Here you see there are the two spaces we created in our demo. And also the last thing I want to show you guys is that okay, yeah, I can probably switch back to only share the. Oh, it's so hard. Come on. Oh, finally. Window. Okay. Cool. Finally. Yeah. And yeah, by the way, just can you imagine how many lines of code you need to write for that application? Yeah, I do a count. Actually, it's just less than 400 lines of code, all the TypeScript code, because a lot of things like the API, the guarded thing is generated from schema. So you end up writing very less code. And also, another thing I want to show you guys is that for now, still you see like for some things, especially for the mutation, you still need to do the route, especially if you calling from the component, but that doesn't be a good thing. So ideally, what we are trying to do is that we're trying to make it, we generate the, oh, maybe it's too small, sorry. Is it okay? Okay. Yeah, this is what we are trying to do. Is we will do the generate the. Actually, I don't know how to call it in Svelte. It's React hooks. Maybe it's a client hooks. Yeah, for the Svelte. Here is the thing. We do this is a use create a space user, delete space user. We will generate the hooks for you. So you do not need to define any of the API routes. You see for this one we are currently working on for the API, it only has the sign in and sign up. Without that, for all the mutations, we will generate for you. Here is I will show you a little bit about. Oh, sorry, it's in the hooks. Yeah, this is a generative thing. We will all generate that from schema. So after you use schema, you can just call that in your front end. So you probably with this one, I guess the lines of code will be even smaller, probably less than 200. Yeah, if you after we are trying to push it to the release, yeah, you can try that. So, okay, yeah, that's all for my part. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. So if you just leave yourself plugged in there, yeah, that's fine. Okay. Thanks for that. That was awesome. Just leave it all plugged in because at the moment the audio is going through here and the videos. So that's fine. Does anyone have any questions? Here we go. Are you okay to do a quick Q&A?
Sure.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, thanks for that. I was just wondering on the GitHub, it's got the Svelte kit adapter is not yet available. Is that in another branch or is it in a repo which isn't yet public? Like if we want to check this out, how can we do so?
For the okay, good question. I forgot to mention. Yeah,
Or maybe I was just looking at some outdated.
Yeah. Here is the GitHub for this the current one because we didn't do anything specific for the Svelte. You see, it's just the backend wrapper on the Prisma. So after you do the get enhanced Prisma, you get all the access control enhanced by that. So that's nothing special for the Svelte. But the later thing we are just working on is under this feature branch. So after that, we are trying to create a Svelte adapter for that. So you just need to define the adapter in your schema, then all the client hooks will be generated for you. I guess probably in this month, we're trying to be able to release that.
Nice, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
So one question I had, the policies you have on ZenStack, the at notation, is that just to have it distinct from other notation?
Yeah, actually, I think we get some idea from the RLS, the row level policy from the database Postgres. Yeah, but the syntax is probably we just created it because it's really simple actually, except you can see it's just very easy. Usually it's just the equal. I think the most complicated part is for this collection prediction expression. But if you are familiar with the Prisma, that should be easy to understand.
Cool. So there was one other thing from me with generating your types, and you said you were making a plugin.
Yeah.
You could. There's a project called Houdini, and they will generate the types with a plugin on schema change. So you might want to look into that for being able to do it without having to regenerate each time you change the schema. Does it like with a plugin? So just a pointer for.
Yeah, for the types, I think we didn't do anything special besides the Prisma. That's all the things handled by Prisma now. Yeah, we only generated the policy code, the control code for that. Cool. But not exactly. We do some because we see ourselves as the enhancement for the Prisma. We do something in the Prisma GitHub. There are a lot of issues like this regular expression validation things. Some smaller things we added in ourselves. Yeah, we do that. Other than that, all the types, the TypeScript type from the model is all handled by the Prisma.
Cool. Anyone else got any questions? Oh, here we go. Sorry.
Hey, I wanted to check with you how the auth bit works out, because obviously different implementations would
good
differ
question.
widely.
I forgot to mention that. You see, in this enhanced Prisma, there is only one parameter you need to pass. This is the user. So actually, it's the user ID. Whatever the auth you use, like for the next auth, you can use the next auth. You just get the user ID from the login user. And for this one, we just decoded from the JSON token, JWT token. And then you get the user ID, you pass it. And this ID is exactly what this auth means. It's the equivalent one. So you can use this to compare with whatever the user ID defined in your models.
Right. So then, for example, support with third-party services like Supabase, for example, auth, because they have their own sort of auth way, and there's Lucia now that's...
Yeah, for Supabase, it's a little interesting because they provide the RLS. I guess some guys, they just choose to use the RLS. But if you don't want, still, if whatever you can get the current user's user ID, you just pass it to our function, then all the API calls you used to do in the Prisma is now will be guarded by our access policy. But you can still use the raw Prisma client as before. Then you just lose those access control. Yeah.
Right. And on the Prisma side, how does sort of, because you mentioned that it's like a wrap around Prisma.
Yeah.
But like then when new features, for example, come from Prisma, is it like a separate dependency that we control version-wise and everything else,
Yeah,
or is it
that's a
controlled?
very good question. Actually, yeah, but as we think, Prisma did a little change from the schema point of view, from the syntax point of view. So I think currently, yeah, it's occasionally it happened actually. Sometimes they add a little thing, but still, yeah, we are trying to follow up with that. But the good thing is that still they don't introduce so many changes from the schema point of view. Yeah, we will just generate the schema for them. Yeah.
Right, because my point is like recently they, for example, introduced a preview feature for
Yeah.
JSON.
Yeah.
Now, if you say want to keep up with latest and greatest,
Yeah.
is it like a dependency that I control which versions, which features, and just have Zen Zenstack
Yeah,
as a separate dependency that then works together, or is everything that Prisma does controlled completely from you? So I just get Zenstack and then I'm hands off. So I need to wait for you, for example, to update Zenstack for
yeah. That's a good one. Still, but for those previous thing, it's not a new syntax. So you can still define it. Whatever we don't recognize, we will port it exactly the same way to the Prisma. Yeah, that's the current strategy. Yeah, but you are right. Maybe someday that's gonna be a problem. Yeah, we're thinking about how to do that. Yeah, but we are keeping our eyes watching for the Prisma.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, so you compared the accessibility policy to RLS multiple times.
Yeah.
And so does Zenstack use RLS at all, or is it a completely different implementation on top of the Prisma itself on application level?
Yeah, it's different. It's just use code. It's not enhanced to the database. But actually, we got some requirement from our current user. They're trying to persuade us to trying to convert the access policy to the IIS, because in some cases they don't need. In some scenario, they use a different client to query the database. They still want the same policy enforced on the database level. Yeah, but that's not a trivial task. We're thinking about that. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Any more questions? Are we good? Okay, so I think what we'll do now is everyone give Jane a big round of applause, and then we'll get.
Thank you.
We'll get our next speakers up, which is Paolo and Antonio. So.
Leave it here.
Just leave you on there for a second, because
Okay,
I'm using the audio still. So we've got Paolo. Paolo, can we hear you?
Yeah.
Cool.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Let's get Antonio on. Okay, do you need a screen to start with?
Yes, my screen.
Okay, there's nothing showing.
You don't see the screen?
No.
I can see it in the live. I will try to. Maybe I will stop.
Oh, there it was for a second.
Okay, I will share again.
Okay, we got it. Okay. So you guys talk amongst yourselves. I've just got to set up the screen here for everyone in London, so we can start watching. So the mic is going to go quiet, and then you guys can start in I don't know, let's say 35 seconds, and I've got the added pressure of hooking up the monitor here.
Okay.
Okay,
I
cool.
will count to 30 for you.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3.
Actually, Paolo, your mic is doing the robot thing.
Oh, I will try to.
Not sure what that is. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day.
Is it this one? Okay, cool. Antonio, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Paolo, let's get you added back in. Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Paolo, I still can't see your
Yes.
screen. Where's your screen?
I'm sharing it right now.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Okay, awesome. You guys can start now, and we'll have a quick Q&A at the end.
Okay, perfect.
Cool.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. This is Hacking Svelte Lab behind the supercharged REPL for Svelte. So, first thing first, who we are Paolo Ricciuti and Antonio Sarcevic. You can find us on Twitter at Paolo Ricciuti, at Sarcevic Antonio, or on GitHub, Paolo Ricciuti and Sarcevic Antonio. Can you hear me? I guess
Yes.
no. Okay. Okay, and you can find us on GitHub, Paolo Ricciuti and Sarcevic Antonio. We are both full stack developer, and we love all things Svelte, open source, and SvelteKit. So, how everything started? Everything started because Svelte Society announced the hackathon, and we, as the whole Svelte community, were pretty hyped. And so everything started with this small, little, innocent tweet from Antonio, who said, "Who's down to team up?" To which I replied with a cute gif of a baby raising his hand. And so in a matter of minutes, we started to brainstorming things on what we could do to participate to the hackathon, to do something cool, but most importantly, to help the Svelte community, because we are part of the Svelte community and we wanted something cool to show and to share with the community. We realized that we both loved something inside the ecosystem that could be enhanced. So we decided, and what we decided is that we loved the Svelte REPL. Why? Well, because the Svelte REPL is very, very cool. Is Svelte one click away. You can go to the Svelte REPL and have Svelte at your disposal. It's wonderful for prototyping because it's really quick, it's easy, it's fast. It's very easy to share your REPL. It's fast and lightweight, but it has some problem. For example, you cannot use TypeScript. As we've seen, you can put lang ts inside the script, but as soon as you use a type, it broke. You can't use the SvelteKit stores inside the REPL, and that's a problem because SvelteKit is the recommended way to build Svelte application. So you need those store if you want to tackle, for example, something inside the navigation. If you want to build something with after navigate, before navigate. And there are a lot of other small problems, like, for example, no dark mode, no formatting, a lot of small little things that are perfectly acceptable for a REPL Svelte, but we wanted to enhance. So we introduced Svelte Lab, which is a supercharged REPL for Svelte and SvelteKit. And you can instantly spin up a SvelteKit project and share it with the world. And most importantly, is made with Svelte by and for Svelte lovers. And that's, I think it's really important. And it's feature packed because we have import from GitHub repo. So you can open a GitHub repo inside Svelte Lab. It has light and dark mode. It has a command palette, and we'll showcase the command palette later. It has code formatting because no one likes messy code, and we neither, so we added a code formatting. It has Vim key bindings. I'm not a Vim user, but I know that a lot of people are Vim user and love the fact that they can use their key bindings inside the REPL. And also, it's very easy to exit Vim. you can install packages. So you have your whole npm ecosystem at your disposal. And also, most importantly, it's SvelteKit tailored, because we are SvelteKit developer. This is built around SvelteKit, and so we know what a SvelteKit developer needs. So, for example, you can search SvelteKit docs right inside your IDE, in this case, SvelteLab. It has SvelteKit specific file icons. So you can easily see if you are inside a layout, if you're inside a page, if you're inside there are TypeScript files, for example. It has SvelteKit root generation. It's something that we take for granted inside the Svelte code, the VS Code extension. And SvelteLab added these two. It also has
I think we got some internet issues. I'm not sure if I'm the one.
and
Okay, there
have
we go.
okay. Can you
You
hear me?
were away for a second, but now you're back again.
Okay, thank you. You can add Tailwind or mthsvex with one command, and inside SvelteLab you can do it even easier. We have Svelte snippet because snippets are a very useful feature that we have inside VS Code, and we wanted to port that inside SvelteLab. And you can even hide the config clutter, because let's be honest, most of the time you'll spend inside the source folder, so there's no need to look at the vit config, the svelte config, and so you can hide that away. But that's enough talking. Permit me to demonstrate, or at least not me, but permit Antonio to demonstrate. So if you can share the screen, the screen from Antonio, we can have a quick live demo.
Antonio, you seem to be muted, but we're sharing your screen.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so we have a new SvelteKit project right out of the gate. I installed it as a PWA, so we got the standalone window. And 1 second. And yeah, we have this basic template where we just have this page.server.js where we export some data. We have the page.js where we import the data, or we take in the data using export. So we can have the server-side communication. And we can also access stuff from the $lib directory. So in here, there's a counter component we import. So everything you love about SvelteKit is available in your browser. We can also have dark mode. When I change my system theme, it changes automatically, but we can also override it again. We just change it back. Okay. And as we heard, we can add integrations easily. So this is the file opener, but when you press Command K, you get the command palette. And in here, we have the Svelte add command, where we can add community integrations super easily. Thanks to the Svelte add community project, we can say, let's add Tailwind, and then just add it to our project. It takes a second here. So we just wait until this toast notification is away, and then we can get started. So it's just installing the packages in the background and also already created the files we need. So we have the post.css config, Tailwind config, app.postcss, and it's just finishing up the install. One second.
In the meantime, sorry for the light mode, but Antonio likes to to write in light mode.
Okay, so now it finished installing. We'll just restart the dev server real quick, and now we see we got Tailwind working. So I can do stuff like class, font, bold, and now we have this here. But I will just really quick remove the space, so I have the basic styles again. Okay, so let's create a new route. We can use the create route command here and create a new contact route. we will need a page Svelte file and a page server.js file, and just like that, we already have a new file created. Here's the page server file, and we will add some markup. So let's give it a title, and also some navigation. Go back home. And we will also need a link to this page. So let's put it right here. Go to contact. And just like that, we have a new route. So like Paulo said, we have the ability to show the file tree from the source directory. So it removes a lot of clutter, and we can focus on the thing we're actually trying to do. And let's try to do something interesting that we wouldn't be able to do in the REPL. So here in the page server, let's simulate something like fetching the database. I will just use a timeout here. So await new promise. Timeout. Now if I go to contact, it should take a while because we're fetching something from database, for example, but this is not a nice user interaction. We are waiting and we don't get any feedback. So let's add a loading spinner, and we can use a store that SvelteKit provides us. So we import the navigating store from $app stores. And then we can conditionally render some markup. So we will use the snippet here, have the Svelte block made for us. And we will just render a div here, and then we will plunk in some CSS to make it a spinner. And it's like that. If we go back to contact, we will see the spinner. All right, I will just turn it down a notch so it doesn't take as long, because I will now show you, if you're working in code, it sometimes gets a bit messy and hard to read. So I will just simulate some messy code, and we can just format it really easily with the command palette, either that, or we can also see the keyboard shortcuts that are associated to the command. So Shift-Alt-F will format our code, Shift-Alt-F, and here we go. It's all clean and ready to work again. And let's also, for the finish, add some forms in the contact. So let's go back to contact, and here we will add a form post and then an input. Name is going to be email, type is going to be email. Then we also need a button to submit it. And when we try to submit the form, we will get this error. Cross-site post form submissions are forbidden. So this is actually a SvelteKit security feature that is enabled by default. We can search the SvelteKit documentation with this input right here. So it just brings up the command palette. And we can search for CSRF because this is the protection that is enabled by default. Let's go to CSRF. So this is protection against cross-site request forgery attacks. And because web containers are doing something funky and it's not really a standard development environment, we need to disable this. So this is something you would not want to do in production, but here inside this web container, we need to disable this protection. So to do this, we need to go to the config file. So let's just go svelte config.js. Then here inside the kit, we want CSRF to be false. And now the form submission should be working. Right. Okay, now we got a different error. That's always good. So let's create a new action for this page because it doesn't exist right now. We can also use a snippet for that. So kit actions. And then we create the default action. And we'll get the request out of there. And then we get the form data. And then we can console log the email. So if I submit now, it should be visible here inside the console. I put it in the wrong page, it seems. So let's just copy paste it over here, and now it should work. Let's try again. Let's reload to get the styles. Okay. And now we see the email down here. Awesome. So we can also test forms if we are a bit hacky and disabling some protection. Again, don't disable this protection in production, but in here for some experiments, it will be fine. Okay. So also to share the REPL, we can just click this little share icon up here. But if it's not a saved REPL, it's just a one-off thing, it will generate this very, very long URL. So it's basically just svelt-app.dev and then this very, very long string. It's actually the whole file tree minified and compressed. But this is not a very shareable link. So if we save this, give it a name first, and then save this project, we actually get another option inside this share sheet. We can also share it as project. And now we get this sweet little shareable link you can post in a tweet. Also, if your experiment progresses and you want to take it out of SvelteLab, we also have an option for that. So we can go inside the command palette and then export the current project as a zip file. So you can check it into GitHub, open it in your favorite code editor, and yeah, just work further on the experiment and yeah, progress it to a whole app. Also, one small thing I want to show is the profile page. So if we go inside here, this is a weird bug I'm noticed just today, but we have access to all the REPLs we saved. So this is in our Pocket-based backend, and you can search if it's working. And yeah, that concludes the demo. We can go back to the slides now. Not sure what's with the profile page. It's a funny bug. It's rendering two routes at the same time.
Do you want me to share your screen again, Paolo?
Yes. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Okay. So you actually didn't see these. So let's pretend you didn't see these. We will fix this bug right away. So we want also to thank those. This is a small list of packages that we use inside SvelteLab, and we are very grateful for everyone that has made SvelteLab possible. So we have a dialogue that celebrate every open source project that we use inside SvelteLab, but we also want to thank every technology that we used heavily. For example, obviously we use SvelteKit to develop SvelteLab. It's hosted on Vercel, which is very, very sweet because you get preview branches, you get a wonderful dashboard. It's very, very sweet. We also use Pocket-based bot for authenticating our users, and under the hood it uses a SQLite database, and it's hosted on Fly.io, which is another wonderful hosting provider. We also want to thank a lot StackBlitz because they open sourced the Web Container API, but also because they, as soon as we published our project, they reached out to us. They helped us with a couple of bugs, and we are providing help each other. And Sylvia and the whole team was very, very sweet and very, very wonderful to help us in basically everything that we needed. We want to thank the whole CodeMirror 6 maintainers, and especially the Replit, because Replit made a lot of packages for CodeMirror 6 because that's what they use. And most importantly, they made the CodeMirror Lang Svelte package that provide us with auto-completion and not auto-completion, but the right language scheme. We want to thank Xterm.js because that's what we use for the console. And as you have seen, this is the same terminal that it's used by StackBlitz, by VS Code, and it's a terminal, a fully featured terminal, completely made in JavaScript. So what about the future? We are currently working to integrate the Svelte language server inside Svelte Lab because let's be honest, I know that Svelte is moving away from TypeScript, but Svelte can. Our mere mortals can't. So I think TypeScript is very, very important. And so we want proper autocompletion, we want proper diagnostics. So we are working to integrate the Svelte language server inside Svelte Lab. A step before, probably we will publish something sooner to integrate the errors with Svelte check. Also, we are planning to add collection, which is something like a sort of playlist of all your experiments and all your hack. And finally, we want to thank a lot of people. We want to thank Svelte Society for organizing the hackathon. They motivated us to start this project. We had kind of an idea, but they really pushed us to build this thing. And also we want to thank to awarding us with the best ecosystem integration. We still can't believe it. We want to thank the whole Svelte community because we really love this wonderful community. The community has shown us that they love Svelte Lab, and we are grateful that you like it, and they provide the helpful feedback. Also, if you want to provide feedback, you can head over on github.com/sveltelab/sveltelab and open an issue, or you can join our Discord. There's also a command inside SvelteLab to join our Discord. We want to thank the Svelte maintainers and contributors because, let's be honest, this is a wonderful language and it's all possible because of open source and because the hard work of all the maintainers and contributors of the whole Svelte ecosystem. And we want to thank again the StackBlitz team for open sourcing the Web Container API and for helping us with bug fixes and ideas. And obviously, we want to thank you for listening to this presentation.
Awesome. So thank you, and congratulations as well, gentlemen, on winning your category. So congratulations on that. Is there any questions from anyone here? And I'll also ask if there's any questions online. If you want to ask Paolo and Antonio any questions, stick them in the chat and we'll ask them here for you. Does anyone have any questions here they want to ask? No. Okay, just me. So I love the stack. Too late. I've started now. Someone raised their hand just after I started asking questions. So the stack. God, what's the database called? PocketDB and PocketBase. Sorry, and Fly.io. Is that just for the auth, or is it for storing the user repos as well?
It's also for the storage, yeah.
It's also for the storage.
So when you had those two links, the initial one, which was just that really long query string, and the short link, are they both the same thing in the database when they get saved?
So the one thing, the short link is actually a link to the database, and the other is a snapshot of the code. So the one gets updated and the other doesn't.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly. Another interesting thing, if I can, about the long link is basically the same way the TypeScript playground share the code. And an interesting thing that I think it's useful to share is the fact that I thought that it wasn't possible because I had problems because if the URL is too long, once you try to access that URL, the browser will refuse to go to that URL. I had this problem at work, for example. It was very nasty to debug. So I always assumed the fact that you had a set limit of 248 character, but that URL can actually get longer. And the reason, because it can get longer, is because the code is saved inside the.
Oh.
So it's not using a query param, but it's
you
like
again,
this hash.
Paolo.
We are using hash code equals, and then you can have it be as long as you want.
That was
Sorry,
me.
Paolo, your mic was.
Oh, what's the last thing you hear?
You were about to go to the juicy part.
Okay, so basically, it's the same way the TypeScript playground share the code. And I used to think that
Yeah, we got that.
there
Sorry.
was a set part, okay. But the reason because it can share a URL that long is because it's stored inside the hash and not the search params. So given that the hash is not sent to the server, actually browsers can handle a very, very long URL. So I just think that is something that it's cool and it's
Awesome. So we've got a question here.
Oh, I had a question, but it was about Pocket Base, and that's been answered. I just want to say that it's really cool that you guys are using Pocket Base.
Yeah, it's a lovely product.
It's a great bit of tech, yeah. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, here.
I just want to check, like, at any point, could that technically replace, say, VS Code or any other ID? Like, theoretically, obviously not at this stage, but like, can I clone my repo in it and commit through it and just use it as an IDE?
I mean, we have GitHub integration. Like, for example, I will just show you how to do it because we didn't show it. For example, this is the Svelte Lab GitHub repo. So if I go to source lib, for example, default project files, and I want to open this is the mdisvex default project file. So if I want to open this specific branch and this specific path, I can just go here in the URL and prepone sveltelab.dev before github.com. So, and if I just go there, it will go to Sveltelab and clone your repository. So this is that specific path. Right now, this is just for bring your project inside Sveltelab. So there's no actual Git integration, but we plan to add something because we can use isomorphic Git to do so. So in the future, we sure plan to add the ability to actually clone a repository inside Sveltelab and to commit to your.
There it is again.
We can't hear you.
Speaking of the fact that it can replace VS Code, I don't think we are there yet, but I don't think we are there yet.
If ever.
If ever, right? Because obviously, even for a very more mature and complete project like like StackBlitz, sorry, it was our old name, SvelteBlitz. So even StackBlitz, which is a much more mature project, I don't think it can replace VS Code because you still need that initial internet connection. You still need a lot of ecosystem around. There are a lot of very, very cool projects. There are GitHub code spaces, there are Replit, there are Gitpod. They all did a very massive work to easily start a project online and almost finish it. Because, for example, most of the features for Sveltelab get started on Sveltelab. I started to walk around in Sveltelab, but sooner or later I always feel the need to export my project and make it into the actual VS Code.
Yeah, basically the focus is on just quick experiments and not building a whole project.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. It is the Svelte REPL, but on steroids, isn't it? It's awesome. The command palette must be a lot of work gone into that. So congratulations. So if there's no more questions here, we'll just say thank you to you guys. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And
Thanks for having us.
it's awesome getting to look at Svelte Lab again. So with that being said, I'm going to take you out of the stream. And
Thank you.
we'll
Bye.
get Hayden up to talk next. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Right, so let's take you guys out. I'm going to put a banner up, which is going to say, we'll be back soon. I'm going to take myself.
All right. Not yet. Is it already? All right. So yeah, I'll try and keep this short because I know there's food ready here. But yeah, so today I'm going to talk about my experiences integrating 3D experiences into Svelte using Thread and Spline. So kind of a coincidence, but as I was preparing this presentation, there seemed to be a huge kind of influx of Thread talks within the Svelte community. So if you just go on the Svelte Society kind of YouTube page, for some reason, well, it could be a sign, but Svelte Summit Spring, the Thread creator Grisha gave a really good talk there talking about the latest version, Thread 6. And then yesterday, there was a live stream on building 3D badges with Thread. So if you are interested after this talk or whatever, I do recommend checking those out. He goes in a lot more depth than I will do today. So yeah, a little bit about me. I'm a front-end engineer at Laced, and Laced is a company here in London. We are a luxury sneaker kind of resale marketplace. We connect sellers, or so essentially sellers will ship their shoes to us. We sort of act as a middleman. We do all the authentication, ensure the shoe is real, and then we ship it out to the buyers. But yeah, at Laced, like a lot of different companies as well, like we use React, and I've been doing React for, let's say, 3 years now. As for Svelte, just around 2 years. I got introduced to it with the Rethinking Reactivity talk. I'm sure the same for a lot of you. So yeah, that's kind of where my journey started, just working on side projects. And as for 3D, I've been playing around for around a year now, just here and there, messing around. But yeah, so why 3D and why should you have it in your arsenal? A couple of points here. First is enhanced visual appeal. So, you know, if you have a 3D experience on your website, it can make it stand out and leave a lasting impression on your users. Improved user engagement. So, you know, when you have something that's immersive and interactive on your page, the user tends to, you know, stay longer on your website as they play around with that experience. Effective storytelling. So when you have animations and that interactive experience, a lot of complex concepts or narratives can be portrayed a lot easier than if using static content. And for product visualization, so take lace, for example, we have shoes. If you're able to model your product in 3D, it gives the user the ability to interact and see it in more realism, which of course helps them make a more informed purchasing decision. Before I get into some demos, I think just a quick look at some basics, the anatomy of a 3D scene. To start off with, we have the scene. I think I'm going to be saying scene quite a lot, but yeah, we have a scene, which is essentially the container for all of your 3D objects, lights, cameras, all of that stuff goes in the scene. And also there's the global coordinate system, so your X, Y, and Z axis, which essentially will allow you to position all of your objects and stuff within the scene. Next, you can start adding your objects. In this case, a little box, but yeah, objects and meshes can, I might use those interchangeably, but essentially a mesh is this like 3JS fundamental component, which represents an object. So a mesh would typically consist of like geometry, which will define its shape and structure. In this case, it will be a box geometry, but also a mesh will consist of a material, which will define how that object will look within your scene. Next, we add some lights that will illuminate all your objects, create some shadows, and obviously give it that 3D realistic feel. And finally, you can add a camera to the scene, which will dictate the user's viewpoint, default viewpoint, and kind of perspective when they first load the scene. So yeah, how do we create 3D scenes in Svelte? These are 3 tools that I've played around with. Of course, it's not limited to these 3 tools. There's, you know, Svelte Cubed, or that's one I can think of at the moment. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. But yeah, these 3 I've tried. 3JS being sort of the most complex one. You probably heard of it. It's the backbone to almost all 3D like web frameworks or whatever libraries. Next, we've got Svelte, which I'll be touching on later on. It's a 3D renderer and component library for Svelte, and it allows you to build your scenes in a declarative and state-driven manner, obviously with reactivity baked in because it's built on top of Svelte. And lastly, Spline, which is a free browser-based modeling tool. It allows you to build a 3D scene within the browser. It's a bit like Blender, if you've heard of that. And it's got a bunch of really useful features and export options. So you can actually export your 3D scene directly into any web application, which of course includes Svelte. So yeah, let's get into some demos. Very basic Svelte demo to begin with. Let's see. So while that loads, we can hide this for a moment. While that loads, this is your simple Svelte application. We start off by importing a bunch of things from Svelte. Most importantly, we've got this T helper, this T component. That essentially extends 3JS. So for example, on line 12 here, we've got t.mesh, and that will instantiate the 3JS mesh class. But yeah, starting here on line 10, we load in the canvas component. That will essentially load in your scene and scaffold everything with a renderer and the scene and everything like that. And also mount it within the DOM. And so within the canvas, within the scene, we want to add our first mesh. To this mesh, we can assign it the position. We say we want to cast shadows. And finally, we, like I said earlier, the mesh consists of a geometry. So in this case, we assign it a box geometry of 1, 1, 1. That being kind of the size. If we set it to 1, 2, 1, you can see it stretches in the y-axis. We give it a scale as well. Next, I can add a mesh standard material, which is a 3JS mesh standard material. We nest it inside of the mesh component, which is the power of Svelte and a lot of 3JS kind of component libraries. And that will, by nesting as a child, will automatically associate it with this parent. So in this case, we've given it a color of 333. You'll notice that it's black and it was white before, and that's because we need to add lights to illuminate the scene. So we'll quickly add those in using a directional light, give it a position, intensity, that sort of stuff. So yeah, immediately we can see that the box is now the gray color that we expect. We'll add a couple more objects. So we've added a torus geometry, which is like a donut. You'll notice the difference here is that instead of passing in the geometry as a prop, we are doing it as a child component using the T helper or the T component. Under the hood, that will do exactly the same thing as passing it as a prop. That's just the power of Svelte. It will recognize that as a child and then associate it back as the prop of the component. Same thing, we give it a material and a color. We'll add one more component, floor, which I expected not to show up, and that's because it's on the kind of bottom plane. And so that kind of leads me on to, yeah, we need to finally add a camera to the scene to kind of finish the entire picture. So if we uncomment that, we add a camera, make it the default one, so give it a position, field of view, that sort of stuff. And then we've dictated kind of what the user sees by default. This orbit controls here is a 3JS utility. It's associated to the camera, and it allows us to have a lot of things which we typically expect out of having a 3D experience on your website, which is panning, zooming. I've disabled. Find that. Yeah, zooming, panning, and what's the other one? There. Is that panning? Yeah, panning, zooming, and rotating, orbiting, whatever. So yeah, that's a very basic scene in Svelte. Of course, one of the most powerful things is that we can make it interactive with state and everything like that. To do that in the Svelte way or the Svelte 5 way, in Svelte 6 is a lot different. But yeah, in Svelte 5, we nest this interactive object component within the mesh that we want to make interactive. In this case, we are importing, or we create the scale variable store, and we create a spring store with a default value of 1. And then on pointer enter, we scale up to 2. Pointer leave, we bring it back down to 1, and that's tied to the y-axis, the scale on the y-axis. So with a few lines of code like that, as soon as we hover over the box, it scales up and scales down. So yeah, a very quick example of Svelte. Let's go back to the slides. Okay. So now a demo on Spline. Yeah, this is the one. Spline is what I typically use to build my scenes. And what I'm going to try and do today live is build what we have there, which is a random thing I found on the internet. So let's exit out, come to Spline. So this is Spline, if you haven't seen it before. We have our sort of, I don't know what to call it, the scene in the middle. On the left side, we have a panel showing all of our 3JS. It's built on top of 3JS, but yeah, we've got all our objects and our lights. On the right side, we have our panel for all of our controls for the properties. So let's get started. With Spline, we can come here and click add to add all sorts of different objects. To start off with, we'll add a torus. Let's see. So we'll just drag one into the scene like that. And then I'll set the position 0, 0, 0. And yeah, that's it. It's in. And then if we look back on the slide, it's sort of got this notch inside of a cutout of the torus geometry. And this is one of the things that drew me to Spline, is that how easy it is to kind of create these things. If I was to do this in, let's say, 3JS or even Svelte, I wouldn't know how to start building a geometry like this. So if I just quickly draw a triangle here, I'll rotate it, and then roughly position it like that. What I'm trying to do here is I want to overlap these two objects to create that intersection that I want to cut out of the torus. So with the triangle selected, I can come down to here. Let's see, extrusion. That will allow me to extrude that shape and give it that thickness to make it 3D. That'll do roughly, because now we've created that intersection. So if I select both of them now, I can come to this side panel, and we can do some Boolean operations. That's like subtraction, union, so merging them together, and also an intersection. So what we want is subtraction, and that will cut out the entire area out of the torus geometry. We'll hit apply and edit, and we've got a shape like that. You'll notice we also lost 2 faces, which is kind of expected given that was part of the intersection. So to bring it back, spline also allows you to do a lot of like path modifying on the mesh itself. So if I come in here and I select one of these edges here, right on this edge. I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, I've selected one of the edges, and spline gives me the ability to fill the hole. So we bring back that face like that. Do the same on the other side. Select the edge, fill the hole, and yeah, just like that, we've got our first shape. Okay, you're testing me now. This isn't part of the demo. All right. So this time I'll pick the face. Oh God. No, we'll try and do this. You can watch it back later. Okay. Yeah, so we fill the face. And next, actually, let's set the material. So from the example, this was sort of like a transparent glass looking thing. So I'm going to pick Fresnel as the material, as I know that sort of gives this frosted glass effect. So yeah, that's it for that. Next, we'll start adding all of the other parts to the scene. So I picked the rectangle, so we drag it roughly. Of course, if you're building this properly, you'll probably have proper dimensions and everything. But in this case, yeah, we'll just do it roughly. Set the corner like that, and then I'll pivot the axis like that. I'll give it an extrusion. And so yeah, that's it really. We've added another object. I prepared a bunch earlier. So we'll add those back in. I think what I wanted to show here is like how easy it is to position things as well. Because I can just drag these objects to where I want them visually. Whereas in 3JS or Svelte, you'd really have to fine tune those XYZ coordinates to really get it to where you want, which is a pain in my opinion, or at least in Spline, it's a lot easier. So, we get those where we want. And to me, that looks good. So lastly, if we think back to the anatomy, we're missing a camera. This is what we want the user to see when they first load the scene. So we'll add a camera. And then in Spline, we've added the camera. We can scroll up on the right panel. And we can pick which camera we want to modify or use. So I'll pick the newly created one that we had. And I think it looks something like this, right? Something from the bottom right corner. Zoom in as well, maybe. Okay, that looks good to me. We've added our camera, we've got our lights, we've got all of our objects. So now we're going to try and get it into Svelte. If we come to the export button here, we've got a bunch of different exports. We've got public URL. This view is pretty new. It's essentially a web component, which the Spline team put together. You give it your Spline URL, and it loads it into your web application. You've got images, you can do a video recording, export 3D formats, et cetera, et cetera. The one I'll do now is public URL. If I open this in a new tab, this URL just loads our scene for us on the page. And what we can do with this is copy an iframe embed. So this is the easiest way to get this 3D scene into your application or even embed it into Notion or something like that. So if we come back to our app here, bring it over here, we'll hide that. It's in the iframe. It's not going to work because of cross-origin things. So we open a new tab, and it's a little bit buggy, but I think once we refresh it, there we go. Okay, it's loaded in. But yeah, that's it. This is our Svelte application loaded in with our 3D scene that we built in Spline. So super simple, I hope. And when I was learning Spline, I think a quick shout out to them is the docs are really well written. So shout out to them and definitely check it out. They also have lots of really good YouTube tutorials as well. So yeah, back to the slides. Oh. Okay, so these are the 3 tools. I've kind of ranked them on complexity, personal preference, personal bias. But there's actually a 4th tool that I'd like to introduce, which is sort of what brought this talk together. And that's Svelte Spline. This is the package that I've written. It's very simple. You can find it on NPM, GitHub, whatever. It allows you to build your scene in Spline and then load it into Svelte. It's only 100 lines long. Most of that is just TypeScript definitions. But yeah, if we just quickly, to understand what it does, we'll think back to what Spline does, which is we build the scene in Spline, and then it just runs it through the Spline loader, their black box, their runtime, all their processes. And at the other end, we get this 3JS scene inside of an iframe. But what Svelte Spline tries to do is it sits in the middle. We take the Spline code export, you might have seen it earlier, and we run it through the library. It generates or spits out a bunch of 3JS primitives, 3JS objects and materials, to which we can then integrate back into Svelte to rebuild our scene from scratch. What that allows us to do is take full advantage of Svelte and the interactivity and the entire JavaScript ecosystem. So yeah, how does it work? This is a small snippet from the library. It just basically takes the Spline loader given by the Spline team and the Svelte use loader hook. Essentially, we take the URL that we get from Spline, we run it through this custom loader, and out the end, we get a Spline object, which we run through this build graph function, to which we then resolve to the user. What this build graph function does, and shout out to React 3 Fiber, it's heavily inspired by what they've done. It takes that Spline object, it traverses through all of the objects, and does a bit of processing to like the position, the scale of rotation, stuff like that, and just returns some data, 3JS objects, back to the user. So let's have a look and try it out. If we come back to Spline, instead of the public URL export, this time we'll come down to code export. We'll pick the React 3 Fiber export, as they don't have Svelte, obviously. And then we'll copy the URL here. We'll come back to our app, and then let's open that back up. And then shall run our Spline component. Cool. This is our Svelte Spline little demo app. Very similar to the Svelte one. We're importing the T component, the canvas, orbit controls, but we're also importing this load Spline function from the Svelte Spline library. What we can do is we pass it that URL, which we just copied from Spline. It's a promise which resolves to this graph object, which simply houses nodes and materials. We're console logging that for now. So if we take a look at what that gives back to us, is this. So we can see it starts off as undefined, and then after it finishes loading, we get our object. Let me zoom in actually. Yeah, now you can see that all of the, we've essentially got every single object that we had in Spline. We got our Boolean, our torus kind of geometry, we got our cameras, our lights, and all of the rectangles. So now we can start loading this back into Svelte itself. So similar to earlier, we'll start off with our ambient light. But this time, instead of defining our own intensity and color, we can take that straight from Spline and what they've given us and what we visually designed in the modeler. So we've added a light. Let's add another one. It's got a few more properties this time, position. But again, everything comes from Spline. Same thing with the camera. We'll load that in. And then we'll load in our first object into the scene. And so just like that, we've got our object that we designed and built in Spline inside of our Svelte application. And it may seem really repetitive with all the props that we have to pass to it. But of course, like, we can build a component to abstract all of that. So I built a really simple Spline mesh component. We expose this node prop, and then we pass in all of the relevant properties that we expect a typical mesh to have: position, material, geometry, all of that. So really quickly, we can load in the rest of our components by simply referencing the node name that they have. And of course, these names here simply map to what we have in Spline on the left panel. And of course, one of the great things here is if I come back to Spline and I decide to change the shape of this and make it really tall, I can hit export, update the code export, let that do its thing. I'll come back to my app, and if I refresh, there's a bit of caching that has to happen. I'm not sure if this will, let's try and open it here. There we go. So yeah, within seconds, we have the updated object straight into our application again. And of course, similar to earlier with Svelte, we can start checking in interactivity in here, integrate any, for example, you might want to do some scrolling, some parallax effects, on scroll, you want to do this, do that. So yeah, that's Svelte Spline. And I think to me, that really brings the best of both worlds between these two technologies. Because I started out with Spline, I found it really simple. And I really like the ability to design my 3D experience visually. But then I can tap into Svelte and the rest of the JavaScript ecosystem to really flesh out and bring whatever creative ideas I have into the experience. So yeah, thank you. That's the end of my talk.
That was awesome. So thanks, Hayden. We're going to be trying out Spline, I think, later on. Any questions from anyone here about that? So first for me, I guess, is when did you find out about Spline over?
Yeah, just over a year ago. I heard it from my girlfriend, a colleague, just from somewhere. And after looking into it, I think the first thing that I noticed was, yeah, you have an iframe export, which to me, having heard of 3JS before, I thought, okay, this is way easier to get started. And for myself, having like a mechanical engineering background, I know how to do like CAD and stuff like that. So yeah, I really wanted to try it out after that.
I've got no idea how to use CAD or anything like that, but that looks a lot simpler than
For sure, yeah.
What I've tried to do in the past with 3JS and well, I don't know, I've used it. What's the one which used?
Svelte Cubed?
That's it.
Yeah.
I tried to use that, and it's visually you can't. I need to see stuff visually, so
exactly.
That's
yeah.
tough. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So what's the benchmarking like for the performance? Does it like still get native 3JS performance?
Sorry, say that again.
So after using Svelte Spline, do we still get native like 3JS speeds or performance?
Yeah, I believe so. I can't answer that confidently, but yeah, after you load it in from Svelte Spline, it's essentially just a Svelte application at that point. If you do something smart, you load in your objects from Spline, and yeah, at that point, it's just some static objects that you have in JavaScript. So yeah, whatever Svelte can do, and I think Svelte claims to have really good performance, 60 FPS. So So yeah.
Yeah. And does Thrall 6 break anything?
With my library, I think so, but it's not released yet. Throughout 6, I will work on it. But yeah, I think they changed the use loader implementation. So yeah, just a little patch on that, I think.
And is it open source? Can we contribute?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome. Any more questions? Yeah.
Hopefully a simple question. You showed us the spline interactive development of objects. Can they be generated, in data from other applications? Is there a sort of an open spline data spec of some sort?
I'm not sure what you mean.
So, the actual objects that you developed interactively ended up in a data set of some sort. Can that be generated from other applications such that the spline becomes part of the pipeline, if you will, from...
Yeah.
Geolocation, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Geolocation.
So like map points and stuff like that. So
Or even just a graph generator I mean by network generator that would actually lay out the graph, but then hand off the 3D components to...
Define each of your objects in Spline, and then the position and the behavior of which you would do actually in the Spline.
Yeah, okay. If it was a sort of a reasonably stable 3D shape, I guess. But if it was crazy, you'd have to generate the data each time, I guess.
Yeah, I think that would be my answer, loosely. You build the objects in Spline, but all of the additional logic you can try and handle within your application itself.
Okay, sounds like an experiment coming up here.
Okay, I think there was a couple of questions in the chat, but I think you answered them anyway. So I'm just going to read them out verbatim. I think you answered them anyway, Hayden. So the first one is how it affects the client browser. Can't test, ? How will it be on TV? So I'm thinking that was relating to the same sort of question you asked about speed and how it affected the client at the end of it, which I think you answered that already, didn't you? Where you said it was just almost native felt. And then I think there's a follow-up question which says how many memory it fit, which I'm guessing is the same sort of question, is how heavy is it on the client?
Yeah,
which I think you've already answered, haven't you?
Yeah, well, since it's kind of loaded over the network, obviously the more objects you want to load from Spline, the heavier the impact is on your initial load time, which is something you probably won't get if you build in pure Svelte. Or I've seen, typically other people will build their 3D objects in something like Blender that will export it as a static file. And if that's served alongside your application, that should be a lot quicker. But yeah, so there is a limitation here that everything's loaded over the network.
Awesome. Any more questions here? Brilliant. I really enjoyed that. So thank you very much. And thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you in June. So